CLIFFDIVER dropped their new album, Birdwatching. Big fan of CLIFFDIVER. We've got an interview coming out with them this week, because of course new CLIFFDIVER release means Joey and Brianna have to come back on the podcast. It's not a rule.
Legally have to.
It's not a rule. It's not signed anywhere, but it's just kind of like it has to happen.
Assume.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, so new album, so you guys are coming on when?
Yeah.
Like, well, so
we're free when you're free.
So
that conversation was fantastic. Stoked for everyone to hear it. And they fucking ripped with this album. It is so good front to back. Not like, obviously we spoke a lot about the record, but one of the takeaways I got was there wasn't a lot going into the studio, and a lot of it was written in the studio, and there obviously was a lot of nervousness going in and being like, we don't have much and we have to leave the studio with a finished product that we're all stoked on. So for them to overcome that nervousness and write such a fantastic record in the amount of time they had in the studio and also record it all at the same time is impressive, because this album you never would have thought was written in a studio within the amount of time that they were there, because they also weren't there like for months and months and months and months. They were only there about a month. So very, very impressive. I love the way the album opens with 30, Flirty, and Thriving. I think that is such a fun song. But my personal favorite is Lord Have Mercy, because it just fucking rips. But I would just like to give a special shout out to the track titles, because when track titles are fun and funny, we always have to shout them out. Like I Reckon You Might Could, I Suppose, that makes me crack up every time I read it, as well as Baby Billy's Bible Bonkers, which I actually haven't said that out loud until right now, and it's 9 times funnier now that I've said it out loud. Yeah, big fan of this album. Always excited for new CLIFFDIVER, and they completely rocked my socks off with this one.
Damn right. Again, I feel like I'm just reusing the same shit every time, but it's like genuinely the energy on this record is so fun and bright. This album, it sounds very bright. I don't know. I love it. I love it a lot. I wish they released it earlier in the season because it's kind of end of summer. This feels like a very early summer vibe where you're just kind of like driving and you have the windows down, especially with the first couple tracks. 30, Flirty, and Thriving is my absolute favorite CLIFFDIVER track that they have ever made. This entire album is a collection of my favorite CLIFFDIVER tracks that they've ever made. I think even though that this was written in such a short amount of time, I think it definitely pressured them to only make bangers. They didn't have time to overthink and rehash things and make things not as great because they're overthinking. I think because of the short time frame, they were able to just fucking lock it down, call it a day, and that's what we got. It is fucking incredible. Another thing to touch on the titles, I think when bands have fun titles, it makes it so much easier to actually remember the titles. I have a hard time unless I've listened to the album like an unhealthy amount of times.
Don Broco.
Remembering titles and actually, like placements on the album, but with funny sounding names like Black Lodge Breakfast Burrito, limited time only.
How can you forget that?
How can you forget that? How can you forget Guitar Pro 5 theme? How can you forget Baby Billy's Bible Bonkers? Like, how the fuck can you can't. 30, Flirty, and Thriving with 3 exclamation marks. Like, it's just an incredible album. And I need to know what bird is in the fucking birdhouse. Because we were asking in the interview, we're like, so there's a bird in there, right? So like, what's in there? Never knew.
Yeah.
Never fucking
like,
knew.
There's no bird on the album cover. Well, what bird lives in the birdhouse?
In the fucking house. That's what we're asking. We could see that there isn't a fucking bird on the album cover. Who's in the fucking house? Maybe that's the next album. We knock on the door and it's like a fucking grown ass like fucking bird or something. I don't know. Yeah. So love this record a lot.
Bird watching too, and there's finally a bird on the album cover. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
great.
Fuck with it. Fuck with it.
Just a couple of other honorable mentions because, as I said, Lord Have Mercy is my absolute favorite. I am a big fan of Days Gone, and I also like Cliff Driver because I like when bands are heavy. I like when bands that aren't normally heavy rip a quick one. This is Cliff Diver saying fuck it and ripping
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
minute long heavy track.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm into it, but I enjoy the entire album front to back. Need to see them live again. Finally got to see them after knowing about them and supporting them for so long. This past summer with the early November, so I need them back on the East Coast now to see them again. Rip some more tracks off this record because they were only playing the singles at the time.
Yeah. I haven't seen them yet. Guys, please come back to Virginia.